Hi everyone. I get a lot of questions about how Blackboard figures out weighted grades, how they do the formulas behind that. So today I want to go ahead and show you very quickly exactly how Blackboard uses the formulas to figure out those weighted grades. So I'm going to use my notes because I do not want to misspeak because these are pretty long calculations and equations. So anyway, here we go. So first I just want to talk about in general how you calculate a weighted total by item. So you want to keep in mind the weights that you have for each item. They must add up to 100%. You know that's already happening because you can't save your column if you haven't done that. And then you just continue to simplify down as you would in any math equation. So for the example I'm going to tell you today, I have 4 categories in my class. I have a persuasive essay, it's worth 20%, a midterm worth 25%, a research paper worth 30%, and then my final exam is going to be worth 25%. So all that adds up to 100% of my total grade. So whatever items you have, and you've already determined what types of percents you're going to give to those and what sort of weights you want to give to those, you can go ahead and put them in your Blackboard site. So in this example, remember that I have my persuasive essay, and this student for whom I'm figuring this grade out, 25 out of 30, times 0.20, because it's worth 20% of the total grade. I go ahead and add that to my next grade. Remember, I'm only weighting by item at the moment. 30 out of 35. Remember, out of is just a fancy way of dividing it, times 0.25. Because remember, my midterm is worth 25% of my total grade. Now I'm going to go ahead and add that with my academic research paper, and my student got 40 out of 50. So they did pretty well. And that was worth 30% of my total grade, so times 0.30. And then my last item, my final exam. My student here earned 30 out of 35. And this item was worth 25% of the total grade. So that's the basic equation, and now I can go ahead and start simplifying. So when I go to this bracket, when I do the math here, it's 0.83 times 0.20. All right, I just solved for that. Plus 0.86 times 0.25. My next one, my research paper. My student, I figured this out, they got an 80%, times the 30% that this assignment was worth. And then finally, this is an 86%, so 0.86 times 0.25, because they 25% of the total grade. You go ahead and continue to simplify this down. So 0.166, 0.215, 0.24, and 0.215. So as you can see, I'm going to go ahead and add these together. And when I do, I'm going to end up with a decimal point. 0.846. Or, if you would rather, as you know, because it's percentages, it's going to be 84.6% of my final grade. As people want to weight their grades, they also want to do them by category, and you saw that example in the video where I showed you how to do it, but they want to either weight them equally or proportionally. So what this means is if you have a series of grades all going into one calculation, but I want this assignment, which is higher stakes, it's worth more points, I want to calculate it as such. So if you choose equally, it will strip away those points. It's going to look at them all as equal. In that case, points don't really matter as much because you're going to weight them within that category. However, if you do proportionally, it's going to keep into account, well, you gave this assignment, it's higher stakes, it's worth more points, I'm going to weight that differently in my final assignment. So let's go ahead and look at what that looks like on my example. I want to calculate my items with equally weighted proportions. So in this case, I can go ahead and apportion the percentage of the weight using the following equations. So quizzes, all worth 40%. Still I have an item, my persuasive essays worth 30%. My final exam is going to be worth 30%. Okay? So that equals up to 100%, but I have these quizzes worth different points, right? Some are worth 10, some are worth 5. So what I want to go ahead and do is account for that by, I'm going to go ahead and multiply them by the point of the percent that I'm going to add in there. So this maybe doesn't make sense right now, but I think if you watch, you'll see what I mean. So on this first quiz, my student got 10 out of 10. Good job. However, that's times 0.08%. Sorry, 0.08 because that's the percent. And I know that because when I figured out how much of the percentage I was getting for each formula, I divided that out, I looked at the total formula, and I multiplied it by the percentage and the proportion within. Next one, 5 out of 5. Good job. This one's also 8%. Whoops. If you're confused about why I keep saying 8%, it's because my total quiz grade was worth 40%. So since I'm weighting them equally, each within that is going to be worth 0.08%. Because when I multiply those out, I'm going to end up with 40% of the total quiz grade. But that's actually not the grade overall. So just remember you're looking at the grade overall, and you're factoring that in, not a specific grade within the smaller grade. This is where a lot of people get hung up when they're trying to calculate these things by hand. Because technically, you're just looking at a portion of the whole. You're doing it a little bit differently than you expected. Four out of 5. Nice try. Whoops. And then another one of those. However, I have a little bit more to add into here because remember, it's not just a quiz grade I want to take into account. I also want to look at all my different grades that I have because I have 2 items that I've weighted differently. So that's a continuation of this line. I'm not simplifying yet. So remember, my persuasive essay is worth 30% of their grade. And this person got a 29 out of 30. Good job. Times 0.30 because it's 30%. Then they got a 27 out of 30 on the final exam. And the final exam was worth 30%, remember? So 0.30. So now I can go ahead and start to add this up. I'm sorry it's on 2 different lines. That's going to make it a little bit confusing, but I hope that you're able to follow what I'm doing. So when I start simplifying these, here's what I end up with. 1 times 0.08 plus 1 times 0.08 plus 0.8 times 0.08 plus 0.9 times 0.08. Remember, I still have to add all those in there. Plus 0.9, one more of those. Got the same score twice. Times 0.08. Not forgetting to add in my final and my persuasive essay, 0.96 times 0.30, because that one's worth 30% of the grade. And finally, 0.90 times 0.30, because that one's worth 30% of the grade. So now I'm getting closer. I'm starting to kind of see how this is shaking out. So now I just have to simplify these and solve for them. 0.8, 0.08, 0.064, 0.072, 0.072, 0.288, that's the persuasive essay, and 0.27. What does this all come out to? 0.854, which equals 0.4%. So this is how, when I'm weighting all my grades equally within a category, I want to go ahead and split that up into equal parts of the total grade, distribute it out, do math on each one of those, add them up, and it's going to come out to a final grade of, in this case, 85.4. So that's the equally weighted total. However, if you want to do a proportionally weighted total, you have to do a little bit more math than that, because you can't just add them all in equally. They're going to be different portions of the larger grade. Because you're doing as a category, you really only have to specify one portion that you want the entire category to take the part of the grade. However, you want to go ahead and split that down into smaller pieces if you want to do it by hand.